And by the way, Burgum got an unusual endorsement at the Iowa State Fair last week from a Democrat, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. Walz said, "I'm not a Republican," he told the New York Times, "and I'm not going to vote in the Republican primary. But if I did, I'd vote for him." Well, Walz was in Iowa as a surrogate for President Biden, and he joins us now representing the Biden campaign. Governor Walz, didn't mean to sandbag you there with your Doug Burgum endorsement, but you guys are neighboring governors. Quickly explain your working relationship with him.
Yeah, well, Doug is a friend, and it's kind of sad to me to hear that interview you did, which was a good one, asking all the hard questions. We've worked together on really important things that governors do, whether that's a flood diversion around Fargo to make sure that the seasonal floods of the Red River don't hit, and then agricultural issues. But look, Doug wouldn't answer the questions that need to be answered, and you were asking what's going to come out of this debate. The minute they all step on the stage, the American people have lost. Are they going to debate who can ban the most books, who Doug, he didn't tell you this, but he signed a 6-week abortion ban, which is hugely unpopular and simply wrong in America. So, yeah, we're friends, but I hate to see it go down this road. Those are very simple questions about, you were asking about the president, about the indictments. And so I was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. And the sad part is I do believe that Doug is probably the most normal of these. There's a pretty weird group of folks going to be on the debate stage. Doug's a pretty good guy, but he's trapped in a Republican Party with no ideas.
Let me ask you something about your party. Here's what Congressman Dean Phillips, who's also a part of the Minnesota congressional delegation, had to say to me last week. Who would you like to see in this race?
I would like to see a moderate governor, hopefully from the heartland, from one of the 4 states that Democrats will need.
So particularly, let's see, Gretchen Whitmer. You'd like to see her, or is it Tim Walz, your home state governor, Tony Evers? Help me out here.
You just said a few names I think would be great.
Later in the interview, he also said many of these people don't want me to mention their name on the record, according to Dean Phillips. But look, I know what you've said about this effort that he's embarking upon, and you've said you support the president. Do you really believe Joe Biden is the best candidate the Democrats could nominate, or is this a political expediency answer?
Well, absolutely. First of all, he's been one of the most highly effective presidents we've ever seen. I sat in Congress for 12 years waiting for Infrastructure Week. He actually delivered on this. And look, Dean is a friend of mine. I love him. But I spent last weekend on Mackinac Island with Tony Evers and Gretchen Whitmer talking about how we're going to make sure that we win this for Joe Biden. Because this is not a debate about Joe Biden's age or experience. It's about a debate about protecting the democracy. You just heard probably the most reasonable of the Republican candidates not give you a single answer on things. It's about recruiting jobs back into Minnesota. It's about being able to feed our children. So, yes, I do believe the president is the best one. I believe he has delivered, and his record shows that. And anything other than that is simply distraction.
Then what do you make of so many, fewer people want Biden to run again than even Trump to run again? And obviously, it's not, what do you make of that Joe Biden seems to not have this groundswell of support right now? Do you think it's all age?
No, I think it's our system. I think Donald Trump and the Republican Party have poisoned it to people. No one trusts our institutions. No one trusts Congress. No one trusts any of us because all they do is attack our families, do those types of things. Look, at the end of the day, Democrats understand if you want to have reproductive freedoms, if you want to move towards a climate change agenda that actually works, if you want decency in the White House, you've got one choice, and that's to vote for Joe Biden. So I can tell you, we're going to do it. We're going to deliver these swing states up in the upper Midwest. That's what Governor Evers and Whitmer and I were talking about. And I think folks are just tired of it all. But the fact of the matter is, this isn't about Joe Biden's age. This is about the democracy. And as we get closer to the election, they'll see that. I'm telling you, after Wednesday and whatever transpires, the craziness on that stage, people start to understand this as we get closer.
I'm curious of where you think this race is going to be about. You've brought up democracy. You've brought up abortion. You haven't brought up the economy. And I say that because the economy, look, it's, on one hand, it's statistically healing. On the other hand, a lot of people don't feel good about it. Even in your state, waning housing, affordability imperils economic growth in Minnesota. These high interest rates, people don't think they have purchasing power right now. They may be able to get by, but they don't have the purchasing power they thought they did just a year ago. How do you navigate that?
Well, first of all, it's a global phenomenon. Here in Minneapolis, we have the lowest inflation rates of 1%. We're starting to see folks start to recover from this. But the Biden agenda has actually done more to tame inflation, to start to bring back manufacturing, to focus on high-tech chip industry, and to focus us on climate change and infrastructure than any other country in the world. So I think, folks, yeah, there's angst in this. We went through a global pandemic. We saw an economy that lurched almost to a stop globally, but we're recovering as fast as any other country. And so I think it's telling the story. Yeah. It's getting out there. I do think this will be about the economy. But look, you just heard an entire interview with a presidential candidate that didn't tell you one single idea what they would do to do anything about that. Joe Biden has CHIPS Act, the investments we're seeing, IRA, it's working.
Look, in fairness, I was asking him a lot about Donald Trump and less about his economic proposals, in fairness to him on there. But I take your point there. On the Hunter Biden situation, just 26% of Democrats have a great deal of confidence in the Justice Department these days. As you pointed out, nobody is happy with our current systems, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. What do you think the president could do to signal to the country that, hey, I'm out of the way here. Hunter Biden is getting treated the way anybody else would get treated? Is there something he could do differently than he's doing now?
Well, I hope the Justice Department makes that case. And look, I'm a parent of a 16 and a 22-year-old. The Bidens love their son. But they also know that he's got his struggles, and he's not on the ballot. Joe Biden is, and Joe Biden's record is. And I think what he needs to do is let the system work. And again, you know, I'm sure he wants the best for his son. But if the justice system says, look, these laws were violated, and here's the penalty for it, that needs to happen. And I think Republicans, again, this, you know, saying they support law enforcement, why they allow, and you asked very specifically in that last interview about these attacks on the judges, attacks on our legal system, it's a responsibility to stand up with that. If I thought Joe Biden or had seen any proof that he were trying to influence that, I would certainly speak up. He hasn't done that. So I think we still need to continue to focus on it.
Look, it's pretty clear, you know, while we debate whether Hunter Biden broke the law or not, the influence peddling part with his last name was perfectly legal. What Jared Kushner has done may have been legal. The question is, should there be an ethics code for presidential family members here? Should we do something?
Yeah.
Would you like to see that? What would that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a broader issue. When I was in Congress, I was the chief author of the Stock Act, not trading on congressional knowledge. My colleagues hated it because they said I was poor. I was a school teacher. It wasn't about that. It was about restoring faith in the system, not supporting me or not believing that, you know, we were getting over on something. So, yeah, I think that's probably, and I think that's a great question, Chuck, because it doesn't get at the tit for tat. When you ask about Donald Trump, they talk about Hunter Biden. Now, there's a big difference there. One's running for president, one's not on the ballot. But yes, I think we had the Congressional Ethics Office that sets up. I just think this idea that Donald Trump violated where you disengage yourself from all financial interests, that didn't happen. And then putting his family in the White House, totally opposed to it. So, yeah, I agree with you. Something should happen there.
Governor Tim Walz, the Democratic governor from Minnesota, also, as he pointed out, a former member of Congress as well. Appreciate you coming on, sharing your perspective with us. Good to see you.
Thanks, Chuck.
You got it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.